welcome to this conversation with the Chairman and CEO of Total, Patrick Pouyanné. I'm very fortunate to have him. And I am the Paris Bureau Chief for Bloomberg News. 20 years ago or so, we were starting to talk a little bit about peak oil, but no one really gave much thought to the possibility of a world less dependent on crude. I remember, I was a young reporter back then, at the end of the 90s, it was all about consolidation amongst the biggest oil majors, board mergers sometimes actually, and it was about reaching out to oil reserves that remain untouched for technological reasons, and how things have changed right now. Geopolitics and economics did have an impact, of course, but not only. There are signs, patent signs of climate warming that started to increase, raising awareness amongst many that we needed to change our energy consumption habits. And then most recently, alas, the COVID crisis, the health crisis across the globe definitely changed the environment, the scenery. So far from resisting, actually, the surprise was that some big energy groups decided to embrace the movement, because the existential realization that they had to adapt was very much there, because of a new source for profits and opportunity for development as well. And simply because their managers are human beings as much as you and I, and they feel the climate warming effect. And they also share the same fear as we do. So this is why I'm really, really fortunate to have Patrick Pouyanné with me. Monsieur Pouyanné, welcome. Thank you very much for being there. I don't have to introduce you. It will take the rest of this session to actually talk about you and your achievements. But let me kickstart this with the first question, which is, how is Total doing these days? What has been the impact from the health crisis for your company, and what are the next month going to be for Total?
The next month, I would like to know, but you know, the word which is dominating this period is uncertainty, even if this afternoon, as you've all seen, with some announcement of a possible vaccine, suddenly all the markets are going up. I think Total was taking 15%, which I've never seen since I'm CEO, which proves that really we are in a strange world where volatility is huge, where uncertainty dominates. So it's difficult to tell you about the future. But the last, I would say, 6 months since the pandemic was declared, of course, we faced in the oil and gas industry, in the energy industry, 2 crises. The first one, of course, was the COVID itself, I would say, with priority given to the health of all our people around the world and immediate actions to put into action crisis plans in order to maintain. And, of course, we had 2 objectives, was maintain the availability of all our plants around the world as much as we need, because energy is just fundamental, reliable energy. Everybody needs energy. So maintaining our operations, offshore platform, refineries, all our plants. And I should pay tribute to the team, because we managed to do that, even if we had to reduce the staff everywhere in order to have team A, team B rotating to ensure the health of all our people and the safety of our people. So that was the first part. I mean, and the months of March and April were fully dedicated to that. But at the same time, we faced another crisis, a huge economic crisis, not only because of the lack of demand or lower demand because of the COVID, like in many businesses, but also because in our industry, you know, some producers strangely decided to increase their production in April when the demand was going down. So the price crashed. The markets are efficient. We've even seen a famous night, a negative price in the oil business, you know. So suddenly it was a strong wake up to all the oil and gas industry to come back to a more, I would say, to face reality. And so OPEC Plus went into action, you know, this big agreement, which allowed to stabilize the price from less than $20 per barrel during the second quarter to something as an average of $40. 40 is not big, but it's better than 20. So we had to face this economic crisis, which means for a company, an energy company, of course, we had to act on our levers, which is reducing our investments, putting in place some cost-saving plans, because cash is our blood, you know. So it was quite an intense period. I would say that in that context, Total is doing well, is resilient. We entered into the crisis with a better balance sheet than some of competitors. We have, which we knew that we experienced that in 2015, that having a low level of debt is just fundamental if in this business, because there is a volatility independently, I would say, from the COVID. The oil is quite volatile, and it has been proven, since 15, I have experienced 100, then going down to 27, early 17, then going up to 72, the average of 2018, down again. So it's very volatile. So balance sheet is fundamental. We also worked hard in the last 5 years to lower our break-even of our portfolio. It was above $80 per barrel in 2015. It's under $25 per barrel today. And, that's just the cornerstone of all the strategy. So what we've done clearly was making our resilience stronger, and we benefited from that, our shareholders as well. So I would say today, my view is that we are well. We stabilize the situation, and we managed our gearing is still under 22%, which is fine. So again, that demonstrates that the business model of a large company can be is offering some good resilience into this type of crisis.
That's interesting. We were discussing about what are the next few months going to be. And you told me, I don't know. And indeed, it's a very volatile context we are in right now. But part of your job is actually to plan on a very long term. And very, very long term, if I may. I do recall some oil projects that would take like 30 years to be developed. So I was wondering, has the change that we've been seeing, are they changing something for you in the way you prioritize and strategize now that it's no longer about securing all these oil and gas resources? It's more, how do you do that? Have you changed? Are you more short term?
Yeah, I would say I think there was another fundamental change for us, because despite this crisis, with very short-term challenges, you probably noticed that in beginning of May, in the middle of the crisis, we announced what we called our climate ambition, which was a strong statement, which has been prepared with the board of directors for many months, and which clearly which led to a strategic presentation in September, where I used some keywords, transforming Total into a broad energy company, going from Total, the oil company that you all know, to Total Energies with a big S, I said. So it's in the why, because yes, it's true what you said, but despite the short-term challenges where we have to monitor them, but I would say it's more in the hand of our teams that the job of the CEO, of the board, is more to prepare the future. And the future of an oil and gas company is obviously facing two challenges. On one side, there is a growing demand for energy. Population is growing, aiming to higher living standards in all emerging countries. So more energy, but at the same time, less emissions, I would say, because this is a climate challenge. And we have to face it, and this has a strong influence on the evolution of the energy markets. Thanks to innovation, price of the barrel went up to $100 per barrel and opens the door to development of many innovations, in particular in renewable field. If we want to face a climate challenge, clearly we have to go to more electricity in the way the planet will be governed. And that means that we have a big shift in the challenge, and we need to plan that. And so we decided that Total will be clearly engaged in that transformation. I use for the first time the word transformation because it means that where today, this year, we sell our products, we sell 55% of oil products and 45% or 40% of natural gas and 5% of electrons. In 10 years, we want to shift that. So it's quick, 10 years, even if it's slow for some people, but it's quite quick. We will shift and we will sell in 2030 only 30% of our energy products will be oil products, 30%, from 55 to 30%. 5% might be biofuels. 50% will be gases, not only natural gas, but also biomethane, hydrogen. And 15% will be renewable electrons, green electrons. So it's going again from an oil and gas company or an oil company to a broad energy company, integrated along the value chain. That means producing all what I described, oil, gas, and green electrons, and we will grow in the producing field. We have a strong ambition because, again, there is a more demand for energy, but at the same time, shifting the energy we sell, less oil products and more, I would say, zero carbon products in our portfolio. And all that is a strategy for the next 10 years. Our ambition is to get to net zero by 2050, but I'm quite pragmatic. I will focus on launching all this transformation, and this is quite a challenge. But I think we have a lot of assets in our hand to manage it.
That's very interesting. Some of your competitors amongst the majors actually didn't have such a change of heart. They didn't foresee that they would have to transform, using the verb that you actually used, transform themselves the way you're doing. And I'm very curious to find out, you've been working in this oil major most of your career. So when was your epiphany? What made you suddenly change? Did you ever think that you would have more than just crude running in your veins at some point? I really wonder, when was for you the defining moment that you foresaw the need for transformation, and what happened?
I think, it's not. I'm not sure I had an epiphany, like you said, but if you observe what we've done in Total, it has been a gradual consciousness of the evolution of the energy markets. I'm mainly driven. My ambition is that I want Total, which is today an energy leader in the world, one of the largest energy publicly listed company. I don't want Total to become a dinosaur. I want Total in 10, 20 years to still be there, but it will not be the same Total. The energy is moving. We have to move with it. 15 years ago or 30 years ago, when I entered into the company, it was a company which was clearly an oil company. Gas was considered as a problem, and I remember when I entered into the company in 97, when explorers were coming to the executive committee with gas targets, we said, no, gas is a risk. It's obvious, 10 years after, gas became the core of the strategy of Total, and today Total is a 50% oil, 50% gas. LNG was just nascent in 1995. Today, we are the second largest company in LNG. So there is a permanent evolution. Why do you have an evolution? Because the mankind is looking permanently to reliable, affordable, and clean energy. Less costly, cheaper energy. So there is a permanent quest for more affordable and cleaner energy. So that's a trend, and we need to be in that. We acquired a stake in SunPower in 2011, a solar company. One of my first decisions when I became CEO was to acquire a battery company, Saft, with the vision that renewables will need batteries, energy storage, if we want really to make that profitable. Then we entered and we acquired a first utility company, a small one in Belgium called Lampiris, then a larger one in France called Direct Energy. So we created, and so today, I think this evolution, first, we have been more confident to better understand this business. And second, obviously, I would say that for me, there was a moving moment in 2019. I was in New York with the United Nations, when a lot of the states declared that we need to go to carbon neutrality by 2050. And I see a strong move around us from the society, and in particular in Europe. We are a European company now. And where we've seen this Green Deal, getting to net zero is becoming a motto. And we said to ourselves with the board, okay, we can continue and will continue to produce hydrocarbons because the world, even in a 1.5 degree scenario, there is still 45 million barrels of oil per day. Half of today, but there is still some oil. So oil will be needed, but not the same amount. So obviously this is not a growing business. So we need to think to the future. And we have decided to have a no-regret approach. And the no-regret approach, because again, we had an experience, was clearly to say, okay, now we can accelerate in the field of renewables and electricity. And in the last 10 months, we've done more than 10 gigawatts of deals. So it's quite a large portfolio that we are creating. We have already 7 gigawatts by the end of the year, by far the largest portfolio among all my competitors. And we decided that and we have proven to us that it can be profitable, but we can deliver a return of around 10%, which is, by the way, higher today what I'm doing in my oil and gas business at $40 per barrel. We don't do 10% return. It's not true. We do 5 to 7%. So I see, even from a pure business model point of view, with renewable business with long-term 15-year PPA, offering stable cash flows as a complement to the volatility of my oil and gas business. So it's a way, it's fundamentally, adapting what we do to the demand. Our customers are shifting to less oil products and more green electrons. So we need to adapt, at the end. That may be the fundamental change for an oil and gas company. As you said, we were mainly driven during 15 years or 20 years as being a supply company, looking for more production, looking for reserves. So mainly driven by supply and not asking ourselves questions about the future demand. What is shifting fundamentally for me and for Total is that our strategy is not driven by the demand, the evolution of our demand of our customers, because this is changing. And so, of course, we have to drive the consequence if we want to continue to grow, because again, my ambition is for Total to be a larger company in 10, 15 years. So this is what has shifted, listening to our customers, taking into account strongly what the society is asking us, and it's important, I think. And finally, last but not least, the fact that we have been able in the last 3-4 years to understand that business and to build a portfolio in the field of electricity and renewables, which make us comfortable, but we can deliver return to our shareholders. Having said that, the other big fit of our strategy is natural gas, and we'll have to decarbonize it by increasing biomethane and hydrogen in the future. Today it's premature, but we have two big fit for our strategy. One is natural gas, and which will be greener, and second is renewable electricity. We'll continue to produce oil, but low-cost oil, because we don't want to have stranded assets, clearly, which means that's why we have a strong portfolio in the Middle East and North Africa region. This is where we find, I would say, low-cost oil. When I'm producing oil in Abu Dhabi at $3.5 per barrel, this oil will continue to be produced for long, so I'm not afraid to be stranded. But we have decided to be more careful about costly oil, and clearly I think there are decisions we have taken 10 years ago of investments in some costly barrels that we will not do again today. And we'll dedicate our capital to other areas of energy, again, to broaden our energy products portfolio to our customers.
So as you said, now you've definitely invested in many sources of energy. Is there any source of energy you not consider at all? I'm thinking nuclear. I'm thinking wind. I'm thinking hydro.
Nuclear. Yeah. Sorry?
No, go ahead, please. Tell me which one you would not.
I think that nuclear. I don't see Total investing in large nuclear plants. Like the one which have been developed in the history of nuclear. Frankly, it's a very different business, very capital intensive, safety issues, and I think Total, it's quite capital intensive. Renewables is quite capital intensive as well, and so we don't have any knowledge in that field. And I think that this traditional large nuclear, I think, is far from our thinking, to be clear. And but I would say in the new energy field, maybe that's something on which we will have to think to the future. For the time being, we have been. At the beginning, we were solar-centric, I would say, from 2011 to 2017. We decided that it was not a matter to be solar-centric. It was probably a mistake because we observed in many countries that there is sun during the day and wind during the night. I mean, there are some complementaries. But at the end of the day, we wanted to produce renewable electricity. And so we have decided to open to wind because of some acquisitions, in particular offshore wind, because offshore wind, and we are one of the pioneer company in floating offshore wind. Because there we see a lot of convergence between the internal know-how. I have plenty of engineers in the company who knows of platforms are floating offshore. So we have, by the way, transferred a team of 30 engineers from E&P upstream to floating offshore wind. So they are using their skills to develop this technology. So that's one of the technology. But I would say we are today at the point where solar, onshore wind, offshore wind, we have built two teams in 2020. We have a new business unit based on biomethane, and we will probably, you will hear about Total investing more at larger scale in the biomethane scale. We are studying various opportunities today. And we are also looking to hydrogen. We have established an hydrogen business unit. it's still, of course, we know we produce hydrogen in our refineries. So it's a matter of combining hydrogen from natural gas with carbon capture and storage, which is a technology that we also develop in the company. So the blue hydrogen is, for me, one field on which we could invest. The green hydrogen, which is water plus solar or water plus renewables and electrolysis, I think this one will become for us an obvious complement to investments in renewables. The more we invest in renewables, the more these hydrogen could become, of course, a storage for the solar peak, for the renewable. And so we are entering into that business. Hydrogen is also a question mark for our distribution business, because we could imagine that in Europe, trucks could be in the future driven by hydrogen. So, of course, it's for us as well an evolution that we need to follow. So I think at this stage, I mentioned different areas except nuclear. So we are not very selective. Maybe in the future we'll have to be more selective, but the ambition is large. I also mentioned the field of batteries with Saft. So clearly, we will identify, because we think it's premature to select like we've done too quickly on the solar business in the past. There are many opportunities, and the question for us is knowing to select the most profitable ones.
Okay. You mentioned 10 years, and indeed, when someone knows really an oil and gas major, 10 years, it's a very short time, actually, when you think of it, to change, to transform a company. But nevertheless, here's my last question to you: is what can help accelerate the transformation we're currently seeing? Everyone keeps talking about the emergency of climate warming, and one element could be perhaps some changes across the Atlantic. So we're in Paris right now. I'm just saying for the people who are elsewhere in the world. But the changes within the U.S. administration coming up, do you think it's going to help? What else can help to accelerate the transformation? What, for instance, would you need at Total, or would your industry need to speed things up a little bit?
I don't comment the politics. Total is almost 100 years old, and we know that if we have been so long and so resilient, it's also because we have to adapt to any political context in any country. And, I think fundamentally by the U.S., that the reality of the U.S. is that they are in the energy transition they have been for at least 10 years, shifting from coal to gas for their electricity system. And they are one of the largest renewable markets in the world with Europe and China. So, it's not because you have a federal policy that you don't have state policies, which are more permanent. Having said that, to answer to your question, I think to the governments, I think what we need are different. First, we need clearly support to innovation. That's fundamental, because if we want to be climate neutral by 2050, it would be a mistake to believe that today we have all the technologies. It's not true. If you think to where we were 20 years ago, nobody was speaking about shale oil, about shale gas, about solar, about wind at the large scale. It's not true. So in my small life in the energy field, I have seen huge innovations. Why? Because again, we permanently in our energy business look for more affordable, more reliable and cleaner energy. So that's a permanent trend. So we have to believe in the capacity of mankind to continue to innovate. That's very important to open our eyes. So support to innovation, I would say, is a strong call for me. Of course, there is another part, which is the carbon pricing, but I would not say that carbon pricing will be the solution. It's part of the system, It's clear that if you give a price to carbon, it will help investors, it will help our companies, it will help consumers to take decisions as well. So the fact that we are quite slow at the world scale level on carbon pricing is an issue, I think. So I hope that we can accelerate it. It's difficult. Europe is at the forefront, but we know that if we are cooking too quickly in Europe, then there is a matter of commercial, I would say, competitions with other areas of the world, which would not have the same policy. So I would advocate, but again, it's not the solution. It's part of the solution, and innovation is probably more important. For example, the support, I know that if we want carbon neutrality, we will need to develop carbon capture, use and storage, not only storage of carbon capture, but capturing carbon, direct air capture, for example, transformation of CO2 into new products, into chemistry, into cement, I don't know. That's just fundamental, because the neutrality in 2050, again, in all the scenarios, you still have some hydrocarbons, which will be produced, natural gas, oil. So carbon neutrality requires to develop this technology. This technology today have no economic background. You know, we have invested in a project in Norway. I can tell you it's $150 per ton, the reality, without the subsidies of the Norwegian government. So the Norwegian government understood it. I think support to innovation is just fundamental if we want to reach it. But I would say that from this point of view, this pandemic, and I would say maybe that's my hope signal message today, is open the door, because look, in Europe, in France, with these, what we call the support programs which will be invested, 1/3 or more is dedicated to this transition, ecology transition, to these new energies. You know, it's true in France, 30 billion out of 100. And I think it's true at the European level with the Green Deal. Out of the 750 billion euro, at least 1/3 or 40% will be dedicated to that. So I think it's very important. So I think the governments are realizing that it's an opportunity, this pandemic, to invest for the future, to support the innovation like hydrogen, for example, where today we are very far from any economic scheme, but we need to continue to work to scale up the markets. And I think they are doing it because it's answering, again, the call from the society. I think because of the pandemic, probably we are realizing, all of us, that the planet is fragile, but we need more sustainability in the business models that we are developing. And it's probably why the governments as well are launching all these programs based on this transition. So that's my call, and I think I hope it's a message of hope, but we need to believe in the future and to be positive, not just to complain about we don't act enough quickly. You know, 10 years, I mean, I know that people are asking me to go quicker, but it's a huge effort of investments, because the last message is all this transition will not happen in one night. That's a wrong, it is a gradual transition. Transition is an important word. It's not transformation, it's transition, you know. It will take time because, again, there is no way for all people around the world to accept suddenly not to have a reliable energy system. So we need to shift it, but to shift it properly with huge investments and ensuring that all people will receive reliable, affordable, and clean energy.
Well, Mr. Pouyanné, thank you very much. If I were to sum our discussion, and very quickly because we don't have much time, is one thing is within the last 10 years, you've been able to gradually transform Total, which was an oil major, an oil and gas major, into an probably energies company. And you said that this happened gradually, with the realization from your customers and the rest of your environment, the stakeholders, that there needed to be a shift from fossil fuel. You said Total can't become a dinosaur. And now that you've embraced the no regret strategy, meaning you've embraced a lot of different energies. You discussed about sun power, but not only, there's also wind now, and notably offshore floating wind. Nuclear is no, it's very specific industry with a very different level of expertise and also of capital use. The points that you wanted to make, if I'm not mistaken, are more R&D, more innovation are still needed. We haven't reached our technological peak. We can still find new ways of producing low carbon emitting energies. We also need to find out more about capturing carbon and storing it. And you also mentioned carbon pricing, which is always mentioned in such discussions, but you said it's only the part of the solution. And lastly, you said there's hope, and seeing the path that that Total has been embarked upon, I could say, yeah, absolutely. Monsieur Pouyanné, thank you very, very much for your time with us.